The massive training center on planet Kepler 442b looked like a city made of metal and glass. Ships from across the galaxy landed every few minutes, bringing new recruits to the most famous military school in space. The Galactic Defense Coalition only accepted the best warriors from every known species. Getting chosen to train here meant you were already special. Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked around with wide eyes. He had never seen so many different alien species in one place. Some looked like walking rocks with glowing eyes. Others had blue skin and moved like they were swimming through the air. A few had 4 arms and made clicking sounds when they talked. Jake felt very small compared to most of them. The human from Earth was 22 years old and stood about average height for his species. His brown hair was cut short in military style, and his green eyes showed determination mixed with nervousness. He wore the same gray uniform as all the other new recruits, but on him it seemed to hang loose. Next to the massive alien warriors around him, Jake looked like a child playing dress-up. A loud voice boomed across the landing area. All new recruits will form ranks immediately. No talking, no looking around. Eyes forward. The voice belonged to Commander Vexthor, and Jake understood why everyone seemed afraid of him. The alien stood over 8 feet tall with dark scales covering his body like armor. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light, and when he opened his mouth to speak, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. 2 large horns curved back from his head, and his clawed hands looked like they could tear through steel. The recruits quickly formed lines. Jake found himself standing next to a creature that looked like it was made of purple crystal. The alien was so tall that Jake had to crane his neck to see its face. On his other side stood a blue-skinned female with fins instead, of ears and gills on her neck that opened and closed as she breathed. Commander Vexthor walked slowly down the line of recruits. His heavy footsteps made the metal floor ring like a bell. He stopped in front of each new arrival and looked them up and down. Some he nodded at with approval. Others he simply moved past without comment. When he reached Jake, he stopped and stared. The silence stretched for a long moment. Jake could feel every alien eye watching him. He kept his gaze straight ahead and tried not to show how nervous he felt. His heart was beating so fast he worried everyone could hear it. Finally, Commander Vexthor spoke. "What is this supposed to be?" Jake swallowed hard. "Sir, I am Recruit Jake Morrison from Earth, sir." The commander leaned down until his scaled face was inches from Jake's. His breath smelled like sulfur and hot metal. "Earth? That little backwater planet with the soft pink creatures?" "Yes, sir." Commander Vexthor straightened up and began to laugh. The sound was harsh and cold, like metal scraping against stone. "This is what Earth sends to the finest military academy in the galaxy? This tiny fragile thing?" Several of the alien recruits began to make sounds that Jake guessed were their versions of laughter. The crystal being next to him made a noise like wind chimes in a storm. The blue-skinned female clicked her tongue in what sounded like amusement. The commander walked around Jake in a slow circle, like a predator studying its prey. "Look at this skin. It is so thin I can see the blood vessels underneath in these bones." He poked Jake's arm with one clawed finger. "They feel like they would snap if I breathed on them too hard." Jake stood perfectly still. His grandfather had been a soldier and taught him that the worst thing to do when someone was trying to break you down was to show weakness. Even though his face burned with embarrassment and anger, he kept his expression neutral. "Tell me, little soft creature," Commander Vexthor continued, "what possible use could someone like you be in combat? You look like you would faint at the first sign of real fighting." "Sir, I passed all the same tests as every other recruit." "Here, sir," Jake replied in a steady voice. This made the commander laugh even harder. "Tests? You mean those easy evaluations they give to primitive species? Those are not real tests. Those are games for children." He turned to address the other recruits. "Look carefully at this human. This is what happens when a species evolves. On a soft, easy world with no real predators, they become weak and pathetic. I have seen insect larvae that look more dangerous." The crystal being made another chiming sound. Commander Vexthor nodded toward it. "Yes, Gorvak, You are correct. Even your offspring who are not yet fully formed would be superior warriors to this human. Jake felt his hands clench into fists at his sides, but he forced them to relax. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. A real soldier fights, with his brain first, his mouth second, and his fists last. In my species, the commander went on, the weak are left behind so they do not slow down the strong. Perhaps Earth should have followed this wisdom. He stopped in front of Jake again. Tell me, human, why should we waste time and resources training someone who will obviously fail? Sir, I believe I can contribute to this unit and serve the coalition effectively, sir. Contribute? The commander's eyes glowed brighter with amusement. What could you possibly contribute? You cannot fight, you cannot intimidate enemies. You look like a strong wind would knock you down. What skills does your pathetic species possess? Jake thought about this for a moment. Sir, humans are good at solving problems and working as a team, sir. Commander Vexthor made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. Problems, teams? This is military training, not a puzzle game for younglings. We create warriors here, not committee members. He turned to a sleek, cat-like alien standing nearby. She had golden fur and green eyes that seemed to see everything. Captain Naris, make a note in this human's file. I predict he will quit within the first week. If he somehow manages to last longer, the training will likely kill him. Either way, he will not be here for graduation. Captain Naris nodded and tapped something into a small device. Her voice was smooth and precise when she spoke. Noted, Commander. Should I arrange for lighter training protocols? Absolutely not, Commander Vexthor snapped. If this human wants to train with real warriors, he will face the same challenges as everyone else. When he fails, it will serve as a lesson to the others about the importance of proper evolution. The commander addressed the entire group of recruits. You will all watch this human carefully over the coming weeks. Learn from his failure. See what happens to those who are not strong enough for real military service. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and only the strongest survive. Jake continued to stare straight ahead, but inside he was making a promise to himself. He would not quit. He would not fail. Whatever these aliens threw at him, he would find a way to handle it. His species might not have scales or claws or multiple arms, but humans had something else. They had the ability to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. Commander Vexthor gave Jake one final look of disgust. I almost feel sorry for you, human. You have no idea what you have gotten yourself into. This training program has broken warriors from species that could tear you apart with their bare hands. You will not last 3 days. As the commander moved on to continue his inspection of the other recruits, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The alien had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed to their limits. Jake's grandfather used to say that the strongest steel was forged in the hottest fire. Commander Vexthor was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The first week of training felt like torture designed by someone who hated all living things. Jake woke up every morning at 4 o'clock to the sound of alarms that hurt his ears. The other recruits seemed to handle the noise better, but Jake had to cover his ears until the ringing stopped. The training facility was huge and filled with obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. There were walls 30 feet high that recruits had to climb using only their hands and feet. Metal bars hung from the ceiling that they had to swing across like monkeys. Pits filled with thick mud stretched between platforms that barely looked wide enough to land on. Jake watched the other recruits tackle these challenges with abilities that made him feel hopeless. Gorvak, the crystal being, simply punched holes in the climbing walls with his rock-hard fists and pulled himself up. The blue-skinned alien, who Jake learned was named Zara, could leap incredible distances with her powerful legs. Thorin, the four-armed insect creature, used all his limbs to move across obstacles like they were flat ground. When Jake's turn came to climb the wall, he struggled to find handholds. His fingers were not as strong as alien claws, and his arms shook with effort after only a few feet. Other recruits finished the climb in minutes, while Jake took nearly an hour. By the time he reached the top, his hands were bleeding, and his whole body trembled with exhaustion. Commander Vexthor watched from below with obvious satisfaction. "Look at the human struggle," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. See how its weak flesh tears so easily. This is why soft species should stay on their comfortable worlds instead of trying to play warrior. The swinging bars were even worse for Jake. His arms were not long enough to make the jumps that came naturally to aliens with different body shapes. Several times he fell into the safety nets below, which only made Commander Vexthor laugh harder. Perhaps we should build special equipment for delicate species, the commander suggested with mock concern. Smaller obstacles for smaller minds and bodies. Captain Neris stood beside the commander, watching the training with her sharp green eyes. Unlike Vexthor, she did not laugh at Jake's struggles. Instead, she seemed to be studying him carefully, as if trying to understand something that puzzled her. The physical training was brutal, but Jake discovered he had more trouble with the combat exercises. The other recruits sparred with weapons that looked like they could cut through steel. When Jake tried to lift the standard training sword, he could barely swing it properly. The weapon was designed for beings much stronger than humans. During one combat session, Jake was paired against Thoron for practice fighting. The insect alien moved so fast that Jake could hardly see his attacks coming. Within seconds, Jake found himself on the ground with Thoron's 4 arms pinning him down, completely. The human cannot even defend itself against basic attacks, Commander Vexithor observed. In real combat, it would be dead before the fight began. But Jake noticed something the commander missed. During their brief fight, he had managed to grab one of Thoron's weapons and move it to a position where it would have hurt the alien if Jake had wanted to use it. Thoron noticed too and made a clicking sound that Jake was learning meant respect among his species. After the sparring ended, Thoron approached Jake while the other recruits moved on to the next exercise. "You fight strange," the insect alien said in broken but understandable speech. "Body weak, but mind sees openings others miss." Jake nodded his thanks. It was the first time any of the alien recruits had spoken to him like an equal, instead of looking at him with pity or amusement. The endurance training pushed every recruit to their limits. They had to run for miles while carrying heavy packs, then complete obstacle courses while exhausted. Most of the aliens had natural advantages that helped them handle the physical stress. Some had multiple hearts that pumped blood more efficiently. Others had lung systems that used oxygen better than human lungs. Jake fell behind in every running exercise. His human body simply could not match the speed and stamina of beings evolved for different environments. Several times he stumbled and fell, scraping his knees and hands on the rough ground. Other recruits lapped him multiple times during the longer runs. Commander Vexthor made sure to point out every failure. The human cannot keep pace with real warriors. Its breathing sounds like a broken machine. Look how it sweats and shakes, with such simple effort. But Captain Neris began to notice something that the commander's arrogance prevented him from seeing. While Jake finished last in almost every physical challenge, he never quit. Other recruits, even much stronger ones, sometimes gave up when exercises became too difficult or painful. Jake kept going no matter how much he hurt or how far behind he fell. During one particularly brutal endurance test, 3 alien recruits collapsed from exhaustion and had to be carried to the medical bay. Jake, despite being obviously the most physically challenged, finished the entire course. He crawled the last 100 yards on his hands and knees, but he crossed the finish line. "Stubborn does not mean strong," Commander Vexthor declared when he saw Jake complete the course. "Sometimes knowing when to quit shows more intelligence than pointless persistence." The tactical training sessions revealed a completely different side of Jake's abilities. While he struggled with physical challenges, his mind worked in ways that impressed even the most advanced alien intellects. The recruits were given complex war scenarios to solve, with multiple variables and competing objectives. Jake consistently found solutions that other recruits missed. When presented with a hostage rescue scenario, most aliens planned direct assaults using superior firepower. Jake designed a strategy that used misdirection and psychology to resolve the situation with minimal casualties on both sides. "Interesting approach," Captain Neris commented after Jake explained his plan. "Most species focus on overwhelming force. Your solution prioritizes preservation of life on all sides." Commander Vexthor dismissed Jake's tactical successes as quickly. as he had dismissed his physical failures. Clever thinking means nothing if you lack the strength to execute your plans. In real combat, enemies will not give you time to solve puzzles. But the other recruits began to take notice of Jake's strategic mind. During group exercises, they started asking for his input on planning phases. Gorvak, despite his intimidating appearance, proved to be thoughtful and intelligent. He began working with Jake on scenarios that combined alien physical abilities with human tactical thinking. "Your species thinks differently," Gorvak told Jake after one successful group exercise. "You see connections others miss. Very useful in complex situations." Zara also began to show Jake respect. Her species was known for their analytical minds, and she appreciated Jake's creative problem-solving. "Humans consider many variables simultaneously," she observed. "Most species focus on primary objectives. You examine secondary and tertiary effects." As the days passed, Jake's body slowly adapted to the brutal training routine. He was still the weakest recruit physically, but he stopped falling as far behind. His endurance improved, and his bleeding hands developed calluses that let him grip obstacles better. More importantly, Jake began to understand his fellow recruits as individuals, rather than just alien species. He learned that Gorvak missed his family on the Crystal Worlds and worried about a younger sibling who wanted to follow him into military service. Zara had left behind a promising career as a scientist to serve the Coalition, because she believed in protecting peaceful species from aggressive ones. Commander Vexthor continued his daily routine of mocking Jake's efforts, but Captain Naris pulled the human aside after one training session. "The commander sees only physical weakness," she said quietly. "But I have been watching you carefully. You possess qualities that cannot be measured by strength tests or speed runs. Do not let his words discourage you from showing what humans can truly accomplish." Jake looked at the cat-like alien with surprise. "What do you mean, Captain?" "I have studied many species during my career," Naris replied. "Each has evolved different survival strategies. Some rely on individual strength, others on group cooperation, still others on intelligence or adaptability. Humans seem to combine elements that rarely appear together in nature." She gestured toward the other recruits. "Watch them carefully. They are all excellent warriors, but they fight primarily for their own species or for personal honor. You fight for something different. I am curious to see what that something is." That night, as Jake lay in his bunk feeling every muscle in his body ache, he thought about Captain Naris's words. He had always known humans were different from other species, but he had never considered it might be an advantage rather than a weakness. Outside his window, alien stars shone in patterns that still seemed strange after weeks on this world. Jake wondered what his grandfather would say about his situation. Probably something about fires and steel, and how the strongest metals needed the most heat to be forged properly. Jake closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that humans belonged among the galaxy's defenders, even if they had to earn that place differently than everyone else expected. 3 weeks into training, Jake had settled into a routine of pain and small victories. His body was getting stronger, though he still looked tiny compared to the alien recruits. His hands had thick calluses now, and his breathing did not sound like a broken machine anymore during runs. Commander Vexthor still made jokes about the weak human, but Jake had learned to ignore the cruel words. The training facility had many different areas for combat practice. The largest was called the Combat Dome, a massive round room with walls that could change shape and create different fighting environments. Computer systems controlled everything from the lighting to the artificial weather inside the dome. On this particular morning, all the recruits gathered for live fire exercises. Instead of practice weapons that only stung when they hit, today, they would use real military equipment. The safety systems were supposed to prevent serious injuries, but everyone knew the training would be more dangerous than anything they had done before. "Today you learn what real combat feels like," Commander Vexthor announced to the assembled recruits. "The weapons are set to low power, but they can still cause significant damage if you are careless. The automated defense systems will test your ability to move and think under actual fire." Jake checked his equipment nervously. The weapon felt heavy in his hands, and the protective armor did not fit his human body perfectly. Around him, the alien recruits looked confident and ready. Their natural advantages seemed even more obvious when facing real danger. Captain Neris supervised the technical staff as they prepared the combat dome. Banks of computers controlled every aspect of the training environment. Holographic displays showed the positions of recruits and the automated systems that would challenge them. Remember, Commander Vex Thor continued, in real combat, enemies do not care if you are tired, or scared or unprepared. They want to kill you. These exercises will teach you to function when death is a real possibility. The first group of recruits entered the dome. Jake watched through viewing windows as they faced obstacles that moved and shot back at them. The automated defense turrets tracked their movements and fired energy bolts that would hurt badly if they connected. The recruits had to work together to advance through the course while under constant attack. Gorvak's crystal body deflected several hits that would have disabled other beings. Zara's speed let her dodge between cover points faster than the turrets could track. Thoron used his 4 arms to carry extra equipment while still maintaining his weapon ready. When the first group finished, they emerged sweaty and breathing hard, but all of them were smiling with the satisfaction of completing a difficult challenge. Jake felt his stomach tighten with nervous energy as his turn approached. Second group, prepare to enter, Captain Neris called out. Jake joined Gorvak, Zara, Thoron, and 3 other alien recruits at the entrance to the combat dome. They had trained together for weeks now and had developed good teamwork despite their very different abilities. The massive doors sealed behind them with a sound like thunder. Inside the dome, artificial sunlight created long shadows between barriers and obstacles. The air smelled like metal and electricity. Jake could hear the quiet humming of the automated systems powering up. Exercise begins in 10 seconds, a computer voice announced. Recruits must advance to the far end of the course and secure the objective. Defensive systems are now active. Jake's heart pounded as he gripped his weapon. His mouth felt dry and his palms were sweaty despite the armor gloves. Around him, his teammates looked focused but calm. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Begin. First turret opened fire immediately. Energy bolts streaked through the air, forcing the recruits to dive for cover behind metal barriers. Jake rolled behind a low wall just as a bolt passed through the space where his head had been a moment before. For the first few minutes, everything went according to plan. The recruits moved in coordinated teams, covering each other as they advanced through the course. Jake stayed in the center of the group, using his tactical thinking to spot weak points in the defensive patterns, while his stronger teammates handled most of the fighting. Then something went wrong. Warning lights began flashing throughout the combat dome. The computer voice that had been calmly announcing their progress suddenly sounded urgent and mechanical. System malfunction detected. Safety protocols failing. All personnel evacuate immediately. But the evacuation doors would not open. The recruits found themselves trapped as sparks began flying from damaged control panels. The automated turrets, which should have been firing harmless training bolts, began shooting with deadly intensity. The power regulators are overloading, Zara called out, her scientific training helping her understand what was happening. Those are full-strength military weapons now. A section of the dome's wall collapsed with a grinding crash of twisted metal. Gorvak, who had been advancing toward the objective, suddenly found himself pinned under a massive beam that had fallen from the ceiling. His crystal body, normally nearly indestructible, showed cracks running through his torso where the metal pressed against him. "Help me," Gorvak called weakly. "Cannot move. Structure is breaking." Thoron tried to reach his friend, but more debris fell around them. The insect warrior's 4 arms became tangled in twisted cables and broken equipment. He struggled to free himself while sparks showered down from damaged electrical systems. Zara had made it further into the course before the collapse, but now she was cut off from the others. Jake could see her blue form moving behind a barrier, but she appeared to be injured. Her movements looked wrong, like she was having trouble breathing. The automated turrets continued firing with deadly precision. What had been a challenging but safe training exercise had become a real emergency, where recruits could die within minutes. Outside the combat dome, Commander Vexthor and his staff worked frantically to regain control of the systems. Technical specialists ran between computer terminals trying to override the malfunction, but the safety systems that were supposed to protect the recruits had become the very things trapping them inside. "Can we shut down the main power?" Captain Narration asked. "Negative," replied the chief technician, a multi-tentacled alien whose species specialized in complex machinery. "The overload has fused several critical circuits. If we cut main power now, the structural supports will fail completely. The dome will collapse and crush everyone inside." Commander Vexthor stared through the viewing window at the chaos inside. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something Jake had never seen before: uncertainty. The proud warrior who always knew exactly what to do found himself facing a situation where all his strength and experience meant nothing. "How long before we can restore control?" he demanded. "At least 20 minutes, possibly longer," the technician replied. "The recruits cannot survive that long under current conditions." Inside the dome, Jake crouched behind his barrier and assessed the situation with the tactical mind that had impressed his instructors. Gorvak was pinned and losing strength as his crystal body developed more cracks. Theron was trapped and could not use his natural speed and agility. Zara was isolated and possibly dying from whatever had injured her. The other alien recruits in their group were either unconscious or too badly hurt to help. The automated systems continued their deadly fire, making any movement extremely dangerous. In a few more minutes, the structural damage would make rescue impossible, even if the technical staff regained control. Jake looked at his weapon, then at his trapped teammates, then at the obstacles between him and them. Every logical analysis told him the same thing: he was the weakest member of the group, with the least chance of survival in this kind of emergency. The smart thing to do was find the safest position and wait for rescue. But Jake's grandfather had taught him that sometimes the smart thing and the right thing were not the same. Jake took a deep breath and made a decision that would change how everyone thought about humans. He left his safe cover and began moving toward his fallen teammates. The first energy bolt nearly hit him before he had gone 10 feet. Jake dove and rolled, feeling the heat pass over his back. His human reflexes, which had seemed so slow during training, now moved with desperate speed. Commander Vexthor watched in amazement as the small human began doing something that defied all logic. Instead of seeking safety, Jake was deliberately moving into the most dangerous areas of the dome. He was heading straight toward the trapped aliens, even though helping them would almost certainly get him killed. "What is it doing?" Vexthor whispered. "It cannot possibly rescue them. It will only die along with the others." Captain Narration pressed her face against the viewing window, her green eyes wide with disbelief. "I think," she said slowly, "we are about to see what humans are really made of." Jake reached Gorvak first, the crystal being looked up at him with surprise and confusion. "Human Jake, you should not be here. Too dangerous. Save yourself." Jake ignored the advice and began examining the beam that pinned his friend. It was far too heavy for a human to lift normally, but Jake noticed that it was balanced on a fulcrum point created by other debris. If he could find the right leverage, he might be able to shift it enough for Gorvak to escape. The massive beam moved just enough for Gorvak to pull himself free. The crystal being looked at Jake with amazement as he crawled out from under the debris that should have been impossible for a human to move. "How did you do that?" Gorvak asked, his voice weak but filled with wonder. "That beam weighs more than 10 of your kind combined." Jake did not have time to explain. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it might explode, but instead of making him weak, the rushing blood seemed to give him energy he had never felt before. Every muscle in his body felt charged with electricity. "Can you move?" Jake asked quickly, helping Gorvak to his feet. "Yes, but you are bleeding badly," Gorvak pointed out. The cut on Jake's face was deeper than he had realized, and blood was running down his neck. Jake wiped the blood away again and ignored the pain. "We have to get Theron and Zara. Can you make it to safety on your own?" Gorvak stared at the human in disbelief. "You cannot go after the others. Look at yourself. You are already injured." The automated systems are firing constantly. It is suicide. Then go get help, Jake said, already moving toward where Thoron was trapped. Tell them we need medical teams ready. Jake left Gorvak behind and ran toward his next teammate. Energy bolts from the automated turrets tracked his movement, forcing him to dodge and weave between obstacles. One bolt passed so close to his head that he could smell burning hair. Something strange was happening to Jake's body. Instead of getting tired from the constant movement and stress, he felt stronger and faster than ever before. His reflexes seemed to speed up, allowing him to dodge attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Pain from his injuries faded into the background as his body produced chemicals that would have been deadly to most species. Thoron was wrapped in cables and twisted metal like a giant web. The insect warrior had stopped struggling and was making weak clicking sounds that meant he was in serious pain. Hold still, Jake told him, beginning to work on the tangled mess. I will get you out. Human friend, Thoron whispered. You should not risk life for me. My species believes in honorable death when trapped. You should save yourself. Jake looked at the alien warrior with fierce determination in his green eyes. My species believes in never leaving friends behind, no matter what. The cables were twisted tight around Thoron's forearms and legs. Jake's human fingers were not as strong as alien claws, but they were more flexible and could reach into small spaces. He worked methodically, ignoring the energy bolts that continued to strike around them. One bolt hit the metal debris near Jake's shoulder, sending hot fragments into his arm. He hissed with pain but kept working. His hands were shaking now, but not from fear or exhaustion. The shaking came from some internal energy that made his whole body vibrate with power. Outside the combat dome, Commander Vexthor watched in stunned silence as the small human did things that seemed physically impossible. Its vital signs are off the charts, reported the medical technician monitoring Jake's health sensors. Heart rate, adrenaline production, muscle tension, all beyond what should be survivable for its species. Why is it not collapsing? Vexthor demanded. Those readings should kill any organic being. Captain Neris had been studying the data displays with growing amazement. Commander, I think we are seeing something that has never been documented before. The human appears to be entering some kind of enhanced state triggered by extreme stress and the need to protect others. Inside the dome, Jake finally freed Thoron from the cables. The insect warrior flexed his forearms and made grateful clicking sounds. You saved my life, human friend, Thoron said with deep respect. My species will remember this debt. Just get to safety, Jake replied, already looking toward where Zara was trapped. I have to help her too. Thoron stared at Jake with his large compound eyes. You are bleeding from multiple wounds. Your body shakes with exhaustion. You cannot continue. But Jake was already moving. His human body, which had seemed so weak during training, now moved with speed and grace that matched the best alien athletes. He ran across open ground while energy bolts chased him, diving and rolling behind cover with perfect timing. Zara was in the worst position of all the trapped recruits. She was pinned behind a collapsed barrier with her legs trapped under heavy debris. Worse, her gills were clogged with dust and small pieces of metal, making it hard for her to breathe properly. Jake, she gasped when she saw him crawling toward her position. You should not be here. Too dangerous for you. Jake ignored her protests and began examining her situation. The debris holding her legs was lighter than what had trapped Gorvak, but it was positioned in a way that made leverage difficult. And Zara's breathing was getting worse by the minute. I need to clear your gills first, Jake said, reaching toward her neck. No, Zara said weakly. If you touch them wrong, you could kill me. Only trained medical staff should handle gill cleaning. Jake looked at her with steady eyes. Do you trust me? Zara studied his face, seeing something there that made her nod slowly. Yes, I trust you. Jake's hands moved with surprising gentleness as he carefully cleaned the debris from Zara's gills. His human fingers were perfect for the delicate work, and somehow he seemed to know exactly how to help her breathe again. Within minutes, her color improved and her breathing became easier. How did you know how to do that? Zara asked with wonder. I watch the medical staff treat you after training accidents, Jake replied, now working to free her legs. I pay attention to things like that. The debris came away more easily than expected. Jake's strength, enhanced by whatever was happening to his body, allowed him to move pieces that should have required mechanical equipment. As Zara pulled her legs free, testing them carefully to make sure nothing was broken, she looked at Jake with new understanding. You came back for all of us, even though it could have killed you. Of course I did, Jake said simply. You are my teammates. But we are not even the same species, Zara pointed out. Most beings only risk their lives for family or pack members. Jake helped her to her feet and supported her as they began moving toward the exit. Maybe that is what makes humans different. We think everyone on our team is family. The automated turrets continued firing as Jake and Zara made their way across the dangerous dome. Jake's enhanced reflexes allowed him to guide both of them between the energy bolts, but each near miss took more out of him. His body was starting to reach the limits of what even human emergency systems could handle. By the time they reached the exit, Jake was stumbling with exhaustion. The strange energy that had powered his impossible rescues was fading, leaving him weak and shaking. Blood from his various wounds had soaked through his training uniform. The exit doors finally opened as the technical staff regained control of the systems. Medical teams rushed in to help the injured recruits. Jake collapsed to his knees as soon as he saw that Zara was safe. Commander Vexthor was the first to reach him. The proud alien warrior knelt beside the injured human with an expression of complete bewilderment. Why? Vexthor asked quietly. Why did you risk everything for them? They are not your species, not your family. Logic says you should have saved yourself. Jake looked up at the commander with tired eyes that still burned with inner fire. Because they are my friends. Because they needed help. Because leaving them behind would have been wrong. But you could have died, Vexthor pressed. Your species could have lost you forever. Jake managed a small smile despite his exhaustion. My grandfather used to say that some things are more important than staying alive. Taking care of others is one of those things. Captain Neris approached with a medical scanner in her hands. The readings are incredible, she reported. During the rescue, his body produced chemicals and energy levels that should have killed him instantly. Instead, they made him stronger and faster than any human we have ever recorded. How is that possible? Vexthor demanded. I think, Neris said slowly, humans have evolved a survival mechanism that activates when others depend on them. Instead of just fighting for themselves, they become stronger when fighting for others. Jake was lifted onto a medical stretcher as the conversation continued around him. As the medical team prepared to take him to the hospital, he looked back at his alien teammates. Gorvak, Thoran, and Zara were all alive and would recover completely. For the first time since arriving at the training facility, Jake felt truly proud of what he had accomplished. He had proven that humans belonged among the galaxy's defenders, even if they earned that place in ways no one expected. Commander Vexthor walked beside the stretcher as they moved toward the medical bay. His usual arrogance was completely gone, replaced by something that looked like respect mixed with confusion. I was wrong about your species, he admitted quietly. I thought physical weakness meant you were useless as warriors. I did not understand that there are different kinds of strength. Jake nodded weakly. Maybe that is something we can teach each other, Commander. You can show us how to be strong in body. We can show you how to be strong in spirit. As the medical bay doors closed behind them, Vexthor stood in the hallway thinking about everything he had witnessed. The small, fragile human had just changed his understanding of what it meant to be a warrior. Jake spent 2 days in the medical center recovering from his injuries. The alien doctors had never treated a human before, and they were amazed by how quickly his body healed itself. What they found even more surprising was the data from his rescue mission. Dr. Kevin Ross, the chief medical officer, was a member of a species known for their large brains and analytical thinking. His people, called the Mentari, had heads twice the size of most other beings and could process information faster than computers. Dr. Ross had studied hundreds of different species during his career, but Jake's medical readings puzzled him completely. The Human subject exhibited physical capabilities that contradict everything we know about his species. Dr. Ross explained to Commander Vexthor and Captain Naris. During the emergency, his heart rate increased to levels that should have caused immediate cardiac failure. His muscles produced force measurements exceeding our equipment limits. His reflexes operated at speeds we have only seen in our fastest warrior species. Commander Vexthor listened with growing confusion. His understanding of military capability was based on measurable physical traits like strength, speed, and durability. The idea that these measurements could change during combat made no sense to him. "Are you saying the human was hiding his true abilities during training?" Vexthor asked. "No, Commander," Dr. Ross replied, adjusting his thick glasses with one of his four thin arms. "The abilities were not hidden. They simply did not exist until the emergency situation activated them. It appears that humans possess a biological mechanism that enhances their physical capabilities when others depend on them for survival." Captain Naris had been studying reports from other coalition training facilities. She spread several data files across the table in front of them. "I have been investigating similar incidents at other bases. Every facility with human recruits has filed reports about unexpected performance during crisis situations." She pointed to specific entries in the files. At the Titan base, a human recruit carried 5 injured aliens to safety through a toxic gas leak, even though the chemicals should have killed him within minutes. At Deep Space Station 7, a human cadet held a damaged airlock closed with his bare hands for over an hour while repairs were made, despite calculations showing the pressure should have crushed his bones. Commander Vexthor examined the reports with growing amazement. "This makes no logical sense. Why would any species evolve to become stronger when helping others? Natural selection should favor individuals who protect themselves first." Dr. Ross adjusted his equipment and pulled up brain scan images on his display screen. "That is what makes humans so unusual, Commander. Most species have developed survival instincts based on individual preservation or small group loyalty. Humans appear to have evolved a group survival mechanism that extends beyond family units to include any beings they consider part of their team." The brain scans showed activity patterns that Dr. Ross had never seen before. When the human subject perceived his teammates in mortal danger, his brain triggered massive releases of enhancement chemicals. His body essentially overrode normal safety limits because protecting others became more important than protecting himself. Captain Naris leaned forward with interest. "Are you saying humans are biologically programmed to sacrifice themselves for others?" "More than that," Dr. Ross replied. "They are programmed to become superhuman when others need them. The enhancement effect makes them stronger, faster, and more resilient, but only when they are acting to save someone else." Commander Vexthor struggled to process this information. His own species, the Draknari, were fierce warriors, but they fought primarily for dominance and territory. The concept of becoming stronger through self-sacrifice was completely foreign to his way of thinking. Over the following days, word of Jake's rescue spread throughout the training facility. Recruits from dozens of different species began approaching him with new respect. Many wanted to understand how humans could perform such feats when they appeared so physically weak. Gorvak was the first to visit Jake in the medical center. The crystal being brought a gift made from his own body material, a small sculpture that would have been priceless on his home world. "Among my people, we give pieces of ourselves only to family members," Gorvak explained as he handed Jake the crystal. "Figure, you risked your life for me when you had no obligation to do so. This makes you family." Theron came next, bringing a weapon crafted by his species' finest artisans. "Human friend Jake," he said in his clicking language, "my hive mates have heard of your bravery. They say you have the heart of a true warrior even if your body is small." Zara brought flowers from her home planet that could only survive in water. She had somehow convinced the medical staff to fill a tank so the flowers could live in Jake's room. "My species values logic above emotion," she told him. "But what you did was not logical. It was something much more important." When Jake was finally released from medical care, he found that everything at the training facility had changed. Commander Vexthor had called a special assembly of all recruits and staff, to address what had happened during the combat dome emergency. The commander stood before the gathered crowd looking very different from the arrogant warrior who had mocked Jake on his first day. His usual proud posture was replaced by something that looked almost humble. I have spent my entire career evaluating warriors based on physical measurements and individual combat ability, Vexthor began. I believed that strength could be measured in muscle density, speed could be calculated in reaction times, and warrior value could be determined through standard testing. He paused and looked directly at Jake, who was sitting with his alien teammates in the front row. I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. The commander activated a holographic display showing footage from the combat dome emergency. The assembled crowd watched in silence as Jake performed his impossible rescues, moving with abilities that seemed to defy the laws of physics. What you see here is not just one individual saving others, Vexthor continued. This is a demonstration of capabilities that we never knew existed. The human species possesses something that cannot be measured by our standard tests, the ability to transcend their physical limitations when others need them. He turned back to address the crowd directly. I have received reports from every coalition facility that trains human recruits. The pattern is consistent across all locations. Humans perform adequately during individual testing, but they become extraordinary when their teammates are in danger. Captain Neris stepped forward to add her own observations. We have been evaluating combat effectiveness incorrectly. We focused on how well individuals could fight for themselves, but real military operations require people who will fight for each other. Commander Vexthor nodded agreement. Humans do not just fight to win battles, they fight to ensure their teammates go home safely. This changes everything we thought we understood about military effectiveness. The commander then made an announcement that shocked everyone present. Effective immediately, human recruits will no longer be evaluated using standard individual performance metrics. Instead, they will be fast-tracked into leadership roles where their unique capabilities can be properly utilized. He looked at Jake again. Recruit Morrison, you have demonstrated qualities that our military has been searching for without knowing it. You are hereby promoted to cadet leader and assigned to our advanced officer training program. Jake stood up slowly, still somewhat weak from his injuries. Sir, I am honored, but I do not want special treatment because of my species. This is not special treatment, Vexthor replied firmly. This is recognition that different species contribute different strengths to our common defense. Your people bring something we desperately need. The understanding that true strength comes from protecting others, not from protecting yourself. The ceremony concluded with Jake receiving commendations not just for his rescue actions, but for changing how the coalition understood human capabilities. As the crowd dispersed, many alien recruits approached him to express their respect and desire to learn from human tactical methods. Later that evening, Jake sat in his quarters writing a message to his family on Earth. He wanted to tell them about his experiences, but he also wanted to share something more important. Dear Mom and Dad, he wrote, I have learned something important here among the stars. We humans are not weak like other species believe. We are different. Our strength does not come from our bodies. It comes from our hearts and our willingness to take care of each other. He paused in his writing and looked out the window at the alien stars. The galaxy is full of warriors who fight for glory or territory or dominance. But there are not many who fight simply because others need them. I think that is what makes us special. That is what makes us necessary. Commander Vexthor's final report to Coalition headquarters would change military policy throughout the galaxy. In it, he wrote, human physical capabilities are limited, but their psychological capabilities are unprecedented. They possess an inherent inability to abandon others in need, even at the cost of their own lives. This trait, which initially appeared to be a weakness, is actually the greatest strength any military force could possess.